Classroom guest, is that you?
Yeah, maybe. No, air fry. Yeah. Third one down.
I don't know. It's not graded, so.
I didn't do it like that.
Yeah.
I just wait like that one.
There.
I don't want to do that. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Would you mind just dragging that over there just so I can see? So before we do our case, everybody has submitted the case, right? So before we go through the case, I just want to talk a little bit about the exam. So I'm not sure if you have seen what I put up, but I just want to make sure that you understand how everything was graded, how to compare yourself to everybody else, and then also how I got that participation grade. So if you look under the exam one results here, what you're seeing is the results of that exam in relation to the dean's grading guidelines. And I know on the very first day of class, I told you that this is how I do your grading, that 30%, top 30% will be in the A range, 10 to 15% or will be in the C or below range. And then most everybody else is going to be in the B range, right? So as you can see here, this exam had 52% in the A range, and then 10% is easy, so that is the C or below. So as you can see, and as I said on the first day, if you earn an A, I do not scale down. If you've earned the A, you get the A, right? So, so here, I would not take away, even though the dean wants 30%, if you've earned 52% of you had an actual earned A, then you get the A. Also take a look down here, because this is where, if you feel like I just completely bombed that exam, nobody failed this exam. So I went down to the lowest grade, which was a 57. And so that would have been a C minus, right? So the idea here is, or what I'm trying to show you is, nobody failed this exam. And so even if that was you that got that lowest grade of a 57, that this is not the end of the line for you. This is, and I should tell you that the only time I've ever failed anybody is when they fail the exam and they're not in class and they're not doing the assignments and haven't submitted cases, right? If you can't pass the exam and you're not actually in class or doing any of the assignments, then there's not much I can do for you, right? No homework done. But if you are in class and you're trying and you're doing the homework and you're submitting the assignments, even if they're wrong, then I am not going to fail you, right? So just kind of keep that in mind, right? So I know at this point, there is nobody in that category right now. Everybody, all 200 and whatever there are of all of my sections, this is just a really, I'm going to say, exceptional group, right? So if I'm looking at 52% in the A range, then that is great. And as I also said, there is nobody in danger of failing. So if you are on the low end and you're thinking, I didn't perform as well as I wanted to, then there is plenty of time to make improvements, right? So this is just kind of, okay, let's step back. What did I do wrong? Maybe I'll prepare better. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do that. So I don't give the exams back. I'm not allowed to give the exams back, but I do want you to sign up for office hours. If you would like to go through your exam, I can go through the exam with you, right? So there's a sign up tab, obviously next week. There's gonna be a lot of you, right? Because there's a lot, I just have a lot of you. So be patient, but sign up for office hours. And then when you sign up, give me your grade, and then also tell me what you want to talk about, right? So what I will do usually at lunchtime before the office hours, I look to see who's signed up. And if you got a 97 and you just want to see that one that you got wrong, I'll give you 5 minutes out of, so I'm going to block out that time. If you are the one with the 57, I'm going to block out more time because I know then I'm going to want to discuss ways that you can make improvements and going through more questions, right? So when you sign up, just give me that little heads up. And then what I do at lunchtime is I'll send an email out, and then I'll tell you where you should or when you should sign in, right? You should sign in at 2:45. You should be signing in at 3 based on what I'm looking at. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on this? Does this make sense to everybody? Okay. And then some people were emailing me also about the participation grade. So remember, the participation grade is based on the poll questions mostly, right? So what I'm showing you here is how you got the grade that was recorded on Questrom tools, right? So I gave 6 poll questions in total up to the first exam, and I give you a 1 point if you answered it and got it incorrect, and 2 points if you got it or gave me the correct answer, right? So I'm looking at 12 possible points if you got them all correct. And then the in-class contribution is a really small portion of this. I want you to talk in class. I want you to ask questions, but know that if you are uncomfortable or you feel like it's going too fast and everybody else is answering it before me, that it's not that big of a deal. Most of your participation is you doing the poll questions where I set time out. I'll give you over a minute to think about what I've just asked you. And usually I've gone over that, right? And then I've covered it. I've done an example for you, and then I give you the poll question. So if you can see here, if you've answered, even if you answered all of those poll questions incorrectly, you're still going to end up with a B in participation because it means that you're trying, right? It's just if you aren't hitting the poll questions, that's telling me you're not there. And then that is the lack of participation. And if you are, and there were only 2 people that actually had all 15 points, right? So out of everybody, I'm not expecting you to have every day be on and be ready, right? So there are going to be days that you just aren't prepared and you're not ready to talk, or there are days where you kind of have to go to the bathroom and you miss the poll question, right? So I give that range you can see so that I'm taking that into consideration. I had to miss class today. I had a doctor's appointment. I had this, I had that. The purpose of this is to get you engaged and just listening to the lecture. Mostly my Zoom people, it's so easy just to kind of get lost when you're home or you have other distractions. And so I'm really just trying to get you engaged. And I don't want, this is meant to be like a little teeny little carrot in front of you, right? It's 5% of your grade, but I'll tell you, if you are listening and have your calculator ready and trying these problems, it will show up as a better exam grade. Another thing, if you were a person that didn't perform well on that exam, I was watching homework getting done at the last minute, right? So just kind of think about this course builds, right? And so if you're waiting until a couple of days before the exam or before that, those homework closed out to do it, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. Those homework questions are hard. They're meant for you to think about what you're doing and actually take those little tiny problems I do and put it into a broader concept, right? Getting the big picture there. And so if you're waiting, you're missing out on that. Okay.
Caitlin has her hand up.
Kate? Kate.
Hi. Oh, wait, Katie or Kate? Sorry. Hi.
Oh.
I just have a question about the case. I totally forgot because we just took the midterm that it was due today.
Okay. All right. So I sent out 2 emails reminding you that it was due today.
Okay.
All right. So here's what you want to do. So log out because you can't listen to the discussion. And then you'll have a little bit of time to do the case and you're gonna email it to me, right? So you can't submit it under the assignment tab because it won't, so you're gonna have to email me the case. And you aren't gonna be able to do the part where you're gonna be able to, well, just email me the case, right? So you're gonna go
Okay.
now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, so that's actually an important part. Everybody that's sitting here has submitted a case, right? You definitely can't sit and listen to the instruction and then think you're gonna be able to submit the case, right? And also, as you are going through, or as we're going through the case, just kind of keep in mind that part of your grade is you listening and understanding what you did wrong yourself so that you are going to be grading somebody else, right? So these cases you're going to have at the end of today, you will be given 2 other random assignments to grade yourself. So you're going to look and it's out of 5 points, right? So when you're grading these cases yourself, I'm going to go through as we're talking about it and telling you how I would think about this and how you should, what you did wrong or what, how much points should be taking off. So that means that, again, even if you didn't do it right yourself, you're going to get points for then understanding and then making good comments to somebody else. Okay. All right, so are we ready to do case? All right, so everybody has to have their name tags out if you want participation. Today, there is no chatting, so this is all verbal, right? So if you want to make a comment, you are going to put your hand up and then I will call on you to make a verbal comment. And then also, once you have made a verbal comment, then refrain from doing it again. My goal is to have everybody, to let everybody get a chance to be able to participate today. Okay. Okay, so let's just start off by talking about the case, just kind of in general here. So this case, there's a couple of things that I wanted to kind of draw to your attention for this case. Number one, I want you to understand in terms of accounting, how estimates can affect your financial statements, right? So this is just one example how estimating something can have an effect on your financial statements. And I know I always feel guilty somehow that I'm corrupting you because I'm explaining to you how accountants or CPAs can manipulate the financial statements. But I'm telling you right now, you can make those financial statements really look however you want them to look. That's why you go to the professionals rather than have your uncle do your books, right? So the way that you are, or the way that they, I don't want to say the way that you will not, you won't misstate your financial statements, but the way that they are generally misstated is through estimates. So I know that you did bad debt expense, right? You estimated bad debt expense. You did that last semester, right? So think about how that happens and how easy it is to manipulate your income statement. So the matching principle tells you when you record revenue, you need to match the expenses incurred to get that revenue. So at the end of the year, when you're looking at bad debt, you're thinking, I don't know who's not going to pay me now, but GAAP says I need to put that expense in this year that I have the revenue there. And so to the best of your ability, you're going to estimate what you think the bad debt is going to be, usually looking at aged receivables or a percentage of credit sales. Does this sound familiar? All right, so you estimate, and that's the expense that you're putting on your books. You could overestimate if you think that you want to show less net income, right? Or you can underestimate and then show higher net income, right? And you also know that next period, when you find out who actually didn't pay you, you don't go back and change that expense. You just adjust allowance for doubtful accounts. So basically, you are getting away with estimating over or underestimating in that particular period. So estimates, warranty expense, anytime you're looking at an estimate, and even if you are not preparing financial statements, if you are a financial statement reader, you should understand that they can be manipulated through those estimates, those expenses that require estimation. Okay, the other thing I wanted to talk about for this case is the SM 131, right? Making sure that you are constantly using or behaving ethically, right? So the idea here is what we are asked to do, and you're probably going to see it quite often as you go through BU. Anything that you learned in SM 131, you are asked to reapply it and reapply it. So that way that by the time you graduate, you are acting ethically, right? And just not putting yourself in that position where you're saying, like in this case here, Terry, what am I going to do, right? I'm not really sure what I should do. By the time you graduate, you should understand that giving voice to values, right? You don't want, I'm not the victim. I know what's right here, and I know how to approach this, right? So that's kind of the thought process. So you will see more ethics cases as you continue on through at BU. Okay. All right, so let's start off with, does somebody want to tell me what the case is about? General summary? Brianna.
So the case is about Irving, who's Terry Ronson's manager at the National Home Product Store, and essentially, Irving is Terry's manager, and she has to allocate like the number of direct labor hours, and Irving wants her to cut down the amount of hours to make the financial statements look better. However, Terry feels uncomfortable doing that.
Okay, okay, right. So we're talking about that predetermined overhead rate. Okay, all right. So the first question is asking, let me actually read that question. Explain how shaving 5% off the estimated direct labor hours in the base of the predetermined overhead rate usually results in a big boost in net operating income at the end of the fiscal year. All right, so my first question is, let's just talk about that predetermined overhead rate. So how do you calculate the predetermined overhead rate? What is that formula? Is it Sing? I know I don't have my.
Predetermined overhead rate is calculated using budgeted total manufacturing overhead cost divided by budgeted total level of application base. And in this case, the application base is direct labor hours.
Okay, so stop right there. That's good. Ashley, why are we using budgeted or estimated overhead? Why not actual overhead?
Because
Why?
we're calculating the applied overhead
Yeah. So
and the actual overhead is different.
why don't we apply actual overhead? Why do we bother using budgeted or estimated overhead?
Because we don't know what the actual overhead is yet. And like usually like in the work in progress, we do the applied so that later when we find out the actual manufacturing overhead, we can create a control account through the cost of goods sold to balance out.
Right, so the idea is we want to be able to start to apply and keep track of jobs on January 1. So it is estimated overhead that gets applied to your jobs. All right, so why do we use estimated application base? Why did we use direct labor hours? What is that, Kenzie? What are we talking about?
Well, like we're using direct labor hours because like in this case it's like the job that takes, it's like the thing that takes up the most time versus
Okay, Michaela?
Sorry, I was muted. Can you repeat the question, Professor?
Yeah, so what's the application base? What are we talking about when we say, why are we using an application base in the first place?
So you're making this estimate based off of direct labor hours, as someone else said. You're trying to figure out how much it's going to cost you per direct labor hour, and that's why you're doing the estimated overhead, and because you don't know the actual yet, as someone already said.
Hold on. Why labor hours? Why not just divide by the units? Why not just divide it among the units?
Because you're not trying to get the cost per units. You're trying to determine how much overhead you're going to get, and in terms of the units, you need to take into account more than just labor. It also is going to be affected by direct materials and direct labor costs that aren't an overhead.
Okay, Jessica?
Because sometimes like you don't only have like one job, you have like multiple job, and you need like a basis to apply all of the manufacturer overhead.
Right, some jobs are bigger than others, right? We talked about the $1 million home and the small renovations. So when we're talking about using a predetermined overhead rate and we're picking an application base, we're starting with those units and then we're going one step further. How many labor hours will it take to make those units? How many machine hours will it take to make those units? Whatever is driving your company or driving the overhead is your application base. And that rate, like you said, Michaela, is going to be per labor hour, but that's going to allow us to distribute more of that estimated overhead to the jobs that will have more labor hours, right? Because you multiply it by the actual application base. Okay, so is everybody, I'm just trying to make sure that you have a good understanding about that predetermined overhead rate, because as we move through, we're going to be using multiple rates. So this was just kind of the beginning of this. Okay. All right, so if we're good with the predetermined overhead rate, so we were talking about that predetermined overhead rate and cutting back those labor hours, right? So Irving asked Terry to cut back on that denominator. So by doing that, why or what's going to happen? Sure.
The predetermined overhead rate is going to be larger with a smaller denominator.
Okay.
So they're going to end up allocating more hours towards it.
Okay, well, hold on. So, so the predetermined overhead rate will be larger because when you decrease your denominator, you're going to bump up your predetermined overhead rate. Okay, Jameson.
Yeah, and then and then you just end up kind of over allocating manufacturing overhead. You have to then balance that out by crediting the cost of goods sold account.
Right, so you're going to over apply, right? Because you have a higher rate, you're multiplying it by the actual hours that are going to be worked, and you're going to end up over applying. Austin.
Yeah, I was just going to go on to, well, you kind of mentioned it, because it's over applied, you have to credit the cost of goods sold account, leading to, less cost of goods sold, affecting the net operating income.
Okay. Sophia?
I was just going to add that when they over allocate the manufacturing overhead, when they compare it with the actual and the manufacturing overhead control account, it makes it look like, well, then they have to like credit cost of goods sold. So ultimately they can decrease their cost of goods sold, which will result in a higher net income than they originally thought and make the company look better.
Okay, Ryan.
Oh, I was just gonna say the exact same thing. Like crediting cost of goods sold lowers your expenses. So then on the income statement, it looks like you're making more money, but it's just fabricated.
Okay. Krill?
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. And also, when we debit the VAP inventory account, it's going to be bigger. And then at the end, yeah, we can credit cost of goods sold and the overall net income will look better.
Okay. All right. So you're all saying pretty much the same thing here, right? All right. So let me ask you this. So I get what you're saying. We're over applied. And so we're going to have to make that adjusting entry at the end of the period. So we're going to go look at what actual is. And then we're going to have to pull it out of cost of goods sold. Doesn't that bring it to actual? Whether you over applied by a huge amount or under applied, the adjusting entry brings you to actual, right? So I'm not exactly sure where you're coming from. Who cares that they over applied? If you do that adjusting entry, it's going to bring you back to actual. Adam,
Well, if your cost of goods sold decreased, that means if you want to calculate your net operating income, you do sales minus cost of goods sold, and that would increase your net operating income.
yeah, but what I'm saying is that, but no matter that adjusting entry is putting your cost of goods sold at the correct amount, right? So that adjusting entry is saying, that's the whole purpose of it. You do have to take the time to add up actual, and whether you're under or over applied, it's bringing you to actual. Or is it? Kenzie?
I don't know, this could be wrong, but something that I was thinking about is because your cost is lower, like your inventory at the end is higher.
Uh-huh.
And then that might affect your.
Okay, yep, so you are heading in the right direction. Juliana?
I don't think it's as much about like what the final numbers are as it is about the timing. So it's a big deal that randomly at the end of the year, it looks like they're being a lot more efficient and it's around Christmas time. So it impacts their bonuses and makes them look good to corporate.
Well, so, all right, so I'm guessing corporate isn't like looking in on those numbers until they actually report it. So I'm thinking corporate is getting the final financial statements. All right, so let's talk about, all right, so does anybody else have any ideas? Kenzie, thinking about what Kenzie was saying? All right, so as you're grading these cases, each one of these 5 questions is going to be worth 1 point, right? So if you are grading somebody's case and they said the cutting the labor hours will bump up the predetermined overhead rate and over apply, and then by doing that adjusting entry, you're going to end up pulling it out of cost of goods sold. I'm telling you, you're halfway there. So you would want to give at least a half a point to the person that answered it the way everybody here has been answering it, right? But like I was saying, the point here that I was trying to get at is that it's bringing it back to actual, but it's not bringing it back to actual. Remember, when you are putting everything or pulling everything out of cost of goods sold, it's not all in cost of goods sold, right? It is in work in process, finished goods, and cost of goods sold. If you are intentionally making that over applied or under applied overhead a material amount, and then only pulling it out of cost of goods sold, that's what's distorting your net income. Now you're pulling too much out of cost of goods sold. What's happening is that this company is taking advantage of the fact that most companies just pull it all out of cost of goods sold, right? So the idea here is most of the overhead is in cost of goods sold. So we can do that because it's an immaterial amount. But when you are intentionally making it a material amount and then removing it all from cost of goods sold, then you have a problem, because now you are understating your cost of goods sold, and your balance sheet, your inventory then is overstated. You have over applied overhead in work in process, finished goods, and cost of goods sold. So what should they be doing if they are really over applying on purpose? What would fix the financial statements? They should be prorating. Yep, so if the over applied overhead is material, then you need to pull it out of all 3 of those accounts, and that would be the correct entry to make. They're taking advantage of the fact that most companies just do this, and so we're going to get this big number, and by doing that, they are misstating their financial statements. Like, does that make sense? Okay. All right. Okay. Right, so if everybody's good with that and you're clear on how you're going to grade everybody else, let's move on to number 2. Okay, so number 2 said, who else has a stake in Terry's decision? What's at stake for those key parties, including those who disagree with Terry, and what's important to them? Right, so the purpose of this exercise is for Terry, you know, she's going to have to go confront Irving, right? So she knows what she's supposed to be doing. She's going to confront Irving, and what she needs to do now is basically try to figure out who her allies are, right? So who can I go to and figure out who's going to be impacted by this, right? What stake do they have in that? And so maybe I can find an ally or some way to go in and find a good person to maybe help approach or convince Irving about the right thing to do. Okay, so Sydney.
So I said first that Irving has a stake in her decision because obviously he wants to be able to like present the best income and he wants to impress corporate headquarters. So he's gonna push Terry to kind of like not use the proper numbers. Okay,
So Irving wants to show corporate headquarters a nice high net income. Yep, that is definitely an interest. Yeah, Ahmed. Well, let's stick with, do you want me to go to somebody else or, all right, so if I'm talking about Irving, so what else is he, why is he doing this? He wants to impress corporate headquarters, but what else is it that he wants to do? Because this is going to help Terry when she goes to talk to him. Mark.
I wasn't too sure for this one. Is it because he's looking for the bonus? I was going to answer for another person who's
Okay, well, yeah,
at risk.
So they're talking about that Christmas bonus, right? I don't know if it's really an actual bonus, but he's probably thinking, well, you know, everybody in the company gets happy when we do this, right? Corporate is happy, my employees are happy. So what's the problem here? So yeah, I agree with that. Rihanna.
Someone else who has something at stake is the project manager, Susan, because inaccurate predictions could, you want in your predictions to be as accurate as possible, and having inaccurate numbers could also make her look bad because it looks like she used more labor hours than she was supposed to.
Okay, yep, so she's gonna look bad if she uses, well, they're gonna say, well, what's the matter with you? Your workers are being, lazy or whatever. We thought we were gonna only need these amount of hours. Yep, Susan is gonna be affected. Did you want to say something else, Amit?
Yeah, I was just gonna add on to that, like, she has the most information about the direct labor hours that were used in the process, so if they like manipulated that number, it would just come out of record credibility and job security for the contact.
Yeah, okay, so not only is she gonna look bad, but she really could look bad. Her credibility could be, yep. Okay, yep, Caroline?
I was gonna say the people actually doing the work might have something at stake because now they're being told that they're working, like 200 hours fewer than they actually are. So their credibility is kind of going out the window, and also it makes them look like they have like a worse work ethic and like they're being lazy.
Yeah, or they're gonna end up having to do a ton of overtime. They're gonna probably they could lay people off, right? Because they're thinking they have less labor hours. So yes, so that could be, could end up, I totally agree. That could be a problem for her workers too. Okay, so Susan is definitely somebody that she probably is going to want to think about when she goes to Irving. All right, so who else has a stake here? Danny.
Yeah, I was gonna say the company execs and sort of the company image as a whole as well, because say something like this is found out, they could lose a lot of reputation and company image, and they could, like, the loss could be a lot bigger than the gain here.
Yeah, okay, so corporate headquarters, I mean, so they want a high net income, right? But they probably don't want it if it's not real. Yep, so, all right, so they definitely have a stake in this because there are problems with numbers not coming in as real numbers, right? So it could be reputation, it could be legal, right? So what if an investor looks at this and makes an investment based on bad numbers and loses money? So that could be a problem for headquarters. Ria?
I said like shareholders also have a stake because they're kind of being misled by management, and like obviously shareholders want to make like good decisions about their investments.
Yep, okay, so they could be making the wrong investment decisions. Yep. Eyeball.
Yeah, I would say like the sales like manager will have a stake because like when they like see there's a like higher cost of good on this product, they will like lower their advertising funds to promote like this product.
Oh, okay, that's a different angle there. So if you're looking at, so if you're thinking about that cost of goods sold, right? So what is that? So not only are you talking about financial reporting, but you use that to set prices, to give to your salespeople. So that could have implications there too. That's good. Austin.
I was gonna say, this is kind of like a smaller stake, but I feel like the people who like really care about the like quote unquote Christmas bonus that they receive every year, I mean, they sort of have a stake in the situation. I mean, they're gonna be upset if they don't get their usual bonus that they've had for the past few years.
Yeah, okay, so the employees, so what's at stake? Yes, they want their bonus. Do you think that they want them to be, is it I mean, so are they earning it for real? Do you think that they care, or is it just, I just want my bonus and I don't really care?
I feel like they don't really care that much. I mean, I feel like behind the scenes, they don't really know that much that's going on, but like if they got their bonus, they'd be happy. And I feel like if they didn't receive it one year, they'd be curious as to what's going on.
Okay, so I'm just thinking, so but they probably want their job, right? So what happens if the company is sued and everybody, so I get what you're saying, but I'm guessing that the employees are, yes, they want their bonus, but they also want to keep their job. They don't want the company to go under because management is doing some funny behind the scene things. Yep, good. Julia?
Also, like the industry as a whole kind of has a stake in it, because if word kind of gets out, but nothing's like corrected about it, it can become like a norm within the industry to like manipulate overhead, and that could lead to inaccurate financial data.
All right, so yeah, so industry as a whole, actually, I like your comment, but I'm even thinking within this company, this is only one division, right? So I like that comment because I'm thinking that maybe Terry should contact the person in the same position in another division, right? Because it sounds like Irving is telling her this is how it's done, right? So she might be able to contact somebody in another division to see, is everybody doing this? Like you were saying, is this an industry-wide thing or even a company-wide thing? Right, so that's good too. Okay. Anybody have any other stakeholders? Everybody's good? All right, so let's move into the next question that is talking about reasons and rationalizations. So what are the main arguments Terry is trying to counter, and what are the reasons and rationalizations Terry needs to address? So here is where Terry is going to go in and talk to Irving. She doesn't want to just knock on the door and show up. She's going to try to anticipate what he's going to say to her, and then she's going to want to have comebacks for that. All right, so we'll kind of combine this one together. All right, so what do you think? What did you think that he was going to say, and what did you think her response should be to that? Somebody that hasn't talked yet? Let's see. Justin, I couldn't read it. There's a Justin.
How's it going? Yeah, I
think that he'd probably take a defensive stance against her, sort of transgressing against what he said. He'd probably say, well, listen, we've done this for the past few years. Like, why aren't you doing this? Maybe sort of threaten her, job position somehow. That's what I anticipated.
Okay, so kind of this is standard practice and you're new here and I'm the boss.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, yep, so if that's what she's thinking, so what would her response be to that?
I think that her response might be to like sort of remind him of like ethical business standards, because she knows what's right. She also has talked directly with Susan. She knows that the estimates are accurate for the 440,000 direct labor hours. So I think that she should, bring those 2 points up and just say, hey, listen, like, this is the situation. This is what's correct. You're wrong. Just sort of confidently plant herself in that.
All right, but if he's saying I'm the boss and this is the way it is, so what's her response to that? Not, this is going to hurt Sue. Well, I guess you could come back with that. Okay, all right, I'll take that. Matt.
Yeah, I was also going to talk about the ethics, like the IMA statement of ethical professional practice. I think if it came down to it and it was like her job was at risk, she could go to corporate and just say, like, Irving wants to manipulate these working hours for higher bonuses. It's a direct conflict of interest. It violates competence, integrity, just like exposing that like malpractice with this like overhead rate and like the working hours. I think that could be pretty powerful.
Yes, so I agree, but that would be like a lever, which is going to be the next thing I'm going to talk about, right? So you're absolutely right, because right now we're just trying to appeal to his senses here to make him feel like or understand what he's doing is wrong. And then if you can't convince him there, then you could say, but the IMA has these standards, right? So I would have put that in one of the levers. But so this is a good point here. So as you're reading these, right, somebody may have put some of these in different categories. Be open-minded. Just because somebody is maybe presenting something to you in a different format or a different way doesn't mean that it's incorrect, right? If they're saying something different from what you said. So you want to be more open-minded as you're grading these, because there's so many options that you would say, oh, yeah, I didn't think about that, but that is true, right? So there's a lot of possibilities here as you're doing these, grading these, right? So that's the whole purpose, is for you to get somebody else's opinion here, right? Okay, so if I'm thinking about Irving, so what did we say? What was his stake? What did he want? He wanted corporate headquarters to be happy, right? So if she is going to go in and he's going to say, I'm the boss and this is the way it needs to be done, she's thinking he wants it to be done this way because corporate is happy. So does she have a response to that? Is corporate going to be happy as a result of what's happening? Claudia?
Well, if she exposes him to corporate, then corporate obviously won't be happy if he's going against IMA ethical standards. So that just counteracts all of his reasoning. Like, right. They won't be happy anyway if they're doing it against ethical standards.
Yep, so she could say, I know you want corporate to be happy, but corporate really isn't going to be happy if it's not real results, right? Corporate is looking for real results, not really for us to be cooking the books here. Okay. Good. All right, what else? So we have standard practices, I'm the boss. Rihanna.
Another thing that's very good, she can talk to other employees that she works with. I think if they all go together to corporate, they'll have higher credibility once we get some their manager.
Well, yes, so but she's trying to anticipate so we're still on right. No, that's all right. So, but you're right. I would put that probably in the last one. What's her plan of action? Bring Susan. It's always better in numbers. So what is she anticipating he's going to say? I know you all just did this case. What did you say? What are you anticipating him saying? Diana?
Maybe like threatening her job, because I mentioned how she was like a new employee. So he would be like, you don't do this, then like that could be the end of her job there. So maybe she could be like, she wants to take more ethical route, kind of like stand up to him to solidify her position there.
Okay.
But he could do it.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know if it was mentioned before, but kind of just how her predecessor was also kind of implicit in practice. So kind of just justifying it from his perspective, saying, no, predecessor did the same thing, so why can't you?
Right. So that's the old standard practices, right? This is your new, and so, like I said, maybe what she could do is say, yes, I know it's standard practice, but you think that this is making corporate happy, right? What else do we say? I know this is standard practice and you think you're making your employees happy with that bonus, right? Except that they might lose their jobs if, as a result of this, and then they're really not going to be happy, right? Or what about Susan, right? So that, do you understand how this can impact Susan? Right, so there's all kinds of things that she could maybe come back with. That was kind of the idea of looking at those stakeholders and trying to figure out who has a stake in this. Materiality, right? So what maybe he might say, what's a few labor hours? It's not a big deal, right? So we're just going to cut a few labor hours. That's not hurting anybody. Well, it certainly can hurt people, right? So all of those stakeholders, all of the things that we talked about would be, you know, like Susan, or what happens when the auditors find out management is not going to be happy here, right? So kind of planning ahead and thinking about what Irving is going to say to her is really going to help her come in and make that meeting successful. Okay. Houston.
I think that maybe we can also convince Irving by maybe I mean for the long run, such Christmas bonus will, I feel like it will decrease to 0 for the long run, like because such apply overhead is like a standard for the employees to know how much overhead should we apply for those jobs. But for the long run, if there are too much overhead applied, they don't want to save the overhead anymore. They're going to start like wasting or overuse those materials. And at the end, maybe they don't, that's not the necessary amount, but they use it. So I feel like we can use this to convince Irving also.
Okay, so it has implications to the production department. Okay. All right, so how about those levers? So somebody already said, right? So if you can't appeal to his senses, then you have the lever of, you know, if he says, yeah, I understand all that, but I'm still going to do it this way. I'm the boss, right? So she could come back and say, but the IMA has these ethical standards, right? What other levers can she use to make him say, oh, any laws? Carlos?
Like maybe like if the SEC gets involved, like the company could get in trouble.
Yeah, right. So how would that all play out, right? So she could say Sarbanes-Oxley, right? Sarbanes-Oxley, you do realize that if somebody invests here and they get hurt based on false numbers, that you can be personally liable now, right? So the SEC could get involved, and that's going to be real problems for headquarters. Right, so these are levers that are more than just kind of applying to the census. What about GAAP? Right, so you are, you know, so here we have to follow, we're preparing financial statements based on generally accepted accounting principles, and we are misstating our financial statements, right? So what happens when the auditors find it? You think the auditors aren't going to look at that predetermined overhead rate? That's the first thing that we look at, right? So they're going to see this, and they're going to go right to the board of directors, right? So these are things that might say, oh, you know, maybe it's not an immaterial thing. Maybe it is something that I should reconsider. Let's see. Okay. And then the last one, the action plan should just be kind of summing things up. You know, like you were saying, Brianna, let's bring, I'm going to bring Susan. I think she has the most impact. So when I go to that meeting, I will bring Susan. Or what you probably want to mention is that you are going to Irving. You never want to jump ahead of Irving unless it is really, unless really she walks out of that meeting and he refuses to budge. Right, so you always want to confront the person that is doing the unethical thing first. If it's your boss, you never want to just kind of jump ahead, right? So, so that might be another thing. Anybody mention anything else in the plan of action? I know you only had a page and a half, but yeah.
Well, I wanted to add this one that I ran out of blue, but I saw in the textbook with like the IMA, they have like a hotline you can call and you get advice.
Yes, yes, they do. And then generally, as you're saying that, right, I'm glad you went back to chapter 1. So when you're looking at those ethics, usually every corporation has its own code of ethics, right? There were examples of in chapter 1 of specific ethics codes. She could come back and say, here's our company's ethics and we are violating it here. Yes. So bringing in chapter 1 is what I was looking for too. Yusa, did you have something else to add? Okay. Okay. Last chance. Anybody have something that, I know you all prepared this, something that nobody mentioned? All right, so like I said, don't forget to do the review of these cases, right? So you're almost done with accounting for this week, but you're gonna have those 2 cases that you're gonna be grading. You'll find them under the assignment tab. Make sure you do that by Sunday, and then you can have, I was gonna say you can have a glass of wine, but I don't know if you're old enough yet. But then you can sit back and have a big ice cream sundae and say, I'm finally finished with accounting. And so we are going to start topic focus 3 on Monday. Okay, so I will see you then. Good job, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Asadoorian, it's Caitlin. I just emailed it to you, so will I still get a partner for this weekend?
You are, all right, you know what? So submit it. Submit under the, I'm just gonna write your name down. So when did you join back in?
About like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, okay. All right, so submit it now and I'll take a look at it. So if you,
Okay.
and then you'll be able to do the rest of it.
Okay, I'm really, really sorry about that. I just had a lot going on this week.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you so much.
Professor. Hi. I remember at the start of class you were saying we could sign up for office hours to go over the exam with you. Where was that sign up going to be? Was that going to be emailed later on, or?
Oh, no. Under, if you go under the resource tab, there's a sign up tab. So the office hours are listed, and then you will be able to sign your name up and tell me what you want to do. And then if I don't know how many people have signed up, I can only do so many at a time, obviously. So just sign up, and then you're going to tell me what you want to do, and then I'll be able to block out the amount of time that I think we're going to need. Or you can tell me, I want to go over the questions and discuss, you know, so give me a feel for what you want.
Thank you.
Professor?
Hi.
I'm a bit confused as to where we can find our partners.
Under
Is it going to be released?
So when everybody is done submitting at the end of the day, then you're going to go back in and it is going to randomly select 2 people for you. It'll be under the assignment tab.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Professor, I think we are like in the book, like we only talk about the 4.3 unit, like job order crossing. Like what is the focus topic? Focus topic 3 is about.
Yep, so after chapter 4, you'll see topic focus 2 and topic focus 3. So that's why I was saying, so topic focus 2 is process costing, which we're not going to cover. And topic focus 3 is what we're going to cover on Monday.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Professor.
Hi.
I actually want to clarify. So in this case, the net income like eventually will be still the same, even if we use the different rate, right? It's just the balance sheet and will look a bit different, or
So the thing is, because you didn't prorate, the problem here is that if you just put it all to cost of goods sold and you have a material amount, then that's what's going to misstate your financial statements. Because that adjusting entry is supposed to put actual on your books. But if you're all of the actual, if you're trying to figure out how much you missed and you're putting it all to cost of goods sold and it's a material amount, you are going to, in this case, pull too much out of cost of goods sold and leave your inventory overstated. When it's material, you should prorate to the 3 accounts instead of the 1.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And also I sent you like an email and I'm still a bit confused. So when I was like practicing for the midterm, and you said like you either use direct labor or machine labor, and it made sense to me. But then on the midterm, there was a question when they gave us like a total amount of money, and they said, for example, it's gonna be divided between like 1,000, let's say, of direct labor and 700 of machine labor, and they asked to use like direct labor. So we divide the whole amount by direct labor, or we need to find like a part which is going to be direct labor and divide it by direct.
You pick your allocation base. It's labor hours or machine hours. I did respond to your email. So so you need to, so you either say my company is driven by machines or my company is driven by labor.
But like when they give you the total budget estimated, I think it's not only one thing or another, it's like everything together. So like how can you divide by direct or like machine? Like
I tell you what your application base is, right? So in the problem, and we did a lot of these in class 2, right? So I gave you labor hours and machine hours. Remember that tricky one I said, actually, I don't know if you actually did it, but I said, here's one to go and try, and you have to go find the solution in the extra problems. So in that case there, I gave you machine hours, I gave you labor hours, labor dollars, and then you have to look to see what the application base is. If it's labor dollars, then you have to use labor dollars, right? You're going to have a company, will still have machine hours. It's just that you have to distribute overhead based on whatever the application base is told, but whatever you're told it is.
So basically we don't care about the second thing.
Right.
Okay, yeah, thank you. It's just like I was confused because it didn't really make sense to me, because I thought like you need to kind of still split them since they're like both considered to be in the budget. But now, okay, I'll just divide by one or another, the one stated.
You'll see, right? And I know I mentioned this in class 2. Watch out for, because you'll be drawn to use the first one that you're seeing, but you have to be told, you were told what the application base is.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
There's one student that the Houston Woo